They laughed when I bought a crumbling house for $900. Then my mother told me to live like trash. In our family, appearances meant everything, and I was never the star. My younger sister's luxury retreat mattered more than my roof not caving in. But rot has a way of exposing what fresh paint hides, and my attic whispered truths our dinner table never dared. When I uncovered the secret my father left for me, stolen and buried by those I trusted, everything I thought I knew collapsed. I will not destroy them. I will rebuild what they mocked. My mother's birthday dinners were always productions, a kind of theatre meant to convince the world that the Whitmores were flawless. The dining room shimmered that evening, candles glowing against crystal glasses, flowers arranged in calculated symmetry. The scent of roasted lamb and rosemary lingered in the air, but it wasn't food that filled the room, it was performance. Every smile was rehearsed, every laugh a cue. When the first photo was taken for Facebook, I stood at the edge, squeezed in so that half my shoulder disappeared behind a vase. Sophie, my younger sister, gleamed in the centre, the golden child bathed in light. I told myself it didn't matter, but when I glanced at the preview on my cousin's phone, I felt the absence of my own reflection as much as the presence of hers. When the cake was brought out, Mother held Sophie's hand and made a toast. "To Sophie," she said, her voice ringing with pride, "our brightest future, the hope of this family." She didn't look at me, though I sat directly across from her. I smiled politely, practiced, the kind of smile you wear when you don't want the camera to catch your disappointment. Someone nudged me, murmuring, "You're the responsible one, Clara. You always keep things together." But responsibility in this family meant being invisible until they needed something from me. I had come prepared with a gift, not expensive, not glamorous, but meaningful. A framed photo of our father holding both of us when Sophie was still in pigtails. His eyes were tired but soft, his hand resting protectively on my shoulder. I thought it might remind us of something real, something before all the showmanship. I waited until the noise settled, then set the frame on the table near my mother. "For you," I said quietly. She glanced at it, her lips tightening, then changed the subject in one smooth pivot. "Now, let's talk about Sophie's upcoming retreat. Isn't it exciting?" My photo sat there untouched, its weight heavier than its glass could explain. As the conversation swelled, I felt heat rise in my chest. They were planning to send Sophie to a wellness retreat in Arizona, thousands of dollars for healing sessions and spiritual guidance. Everyone praised the idea, nodding as though enlightenment could be bought like designer handbags. Then I spoke, my voice steadier than I felt. "I bought a house," I said. The words dropped into the air like stones. Heads turned. Sophie gasped with amusement. "A house?" she repeated, laughter already spilling out. "Yes," I said. "From the county auction. It's small rundown, but mine. $900. The room broke into laughter, sharp and cutting. $900? My uncle snorted. "That's not a house, that's a hazard." Sophie leaned forward, grinning. "You mean you're going to live with raccoons now?" The table erupted. Mother's face hardened. "Clara," she said, her voice loud enough to quiet the others. "You know that money should have gone to support Sophie's retreat. She needs healing. That's what matters." I stared at her. I need a place to live. You always have a place here, she said smoothly, as if the sentence wasn't a threat. But Sophie's retreat will change her life. That's what your father would have wanted. Something twisted in my gut. Dad never said that. She leaned closer, her eyes sharp. Your father didn't leave anything for you, Clara. Don't fool yourself. If he had, I would know. The gaslight flickered, and for a moment I almost doubted myself. But I remembered the letters, the quiet conversations, when Dad spoke of saving for my future, not Sophie's spa weekends. Still, no one at the table looked at me with belief. Their silence was its own judgment. I swallowed, fighting to steady my breath. This house may be ugly, but it's mine. I'll make it into something. Laughter again, sharper this time. A junk house for a junk dream, Sophie smirked. I forced myself not to flinch, though my hands trembled under the table. Then let me fail on my own terms. No one responded. The conversation veered back to Sophie's retreat, as if my words were nothing more than static in the background. I sat there, my plate untouched, the photo of my father still sitting by my mother's elbow like a ghost. Later, when the plates were cleared and the family clustered around Sophie to take more photos, I slipped into the hallway. My bag rested against the wall, and when I bent to pick it up, I saw my mother in the kitchen with Sophie. Her back was turned, but I recognized the stiff tilt of her shoulders as she pressed an envelope into Sophie's hand. Sophie's fingers curled around it, the corner flashing with the red stamp of a local bank. I froze. Sophie tucked the envelope quickly into her purse, and Mother whispered something I couldn't catch. But the look on Sophie's face, half smug, half frightened, was unmistakable. For a moment I thought of walking in, demanding an explanation. Instead I turned away, my pulse hammering. Whatever was in that envelope, it wasn't meant for me. I didn't have proof yet, but I knew in my bones there was more to this retreat than they wanted me to see. And for the first time, a sliver of anger cut through the shame. The first sting came through my phone. A cousin added me back into the family group chat, and before I could mute it, the screen filled with pings. At the top was an image, a cartoon queen wearing a garbage bag for a gown, crown crooked, holding a mop like a scepter. Across it, in bold red letters, Queen of Trash. Beneath, a stream of laughing emojis, inside jokes about raccoons and mould. Sophie chimed in, "All hail the junk queen. Maybe she'll host retreats in her haunted palace." The chorus of amusement rolled on. I told myself not to care, not to give them the power. But my hands shook as I put the phone down. Even when I silenced it, the laughter echoed in my head, louder than any storm outside. That weekend, my cousin Matt was supposed to bring his circular saw to help cut replacement beams. When I called to check in, his voice sounded tight. "Machine broke down," he said quickly. "Sorry, Clara, can't help you." He hung up before I could ask anything more. Alone in the gutted living room, I stared at the sagging ceiling. It wasn't just wood or plaster falling apart. It was every strand of connection I thought I had. A whisper inside me asked if maybe they were right, if I was chasing a delusion. Who in their right mind bought a house for $900 and thought they could make it livable? But doubt doesn't patch holes. Action does. I climbed the narrow stairs with rolls of plastic sheeting, duct tape and a hammer. Rain had started again, dripping through the roof in cruel rhythm. Balancing on a beam, I pressed plastic against a hole, sealing it with strips of tape. My palm slipped. The hammer grazed my skin, leaving a thin line of blood. I hissed, pressing the wound against my jeans, but I kept going. Every strip of plastic was defiance. Every nail I drove into rotting wood was a vow. I might break, but I would not fold. By dusk, the leak slowed. I collapsed onto the bare floor, sweat stinging my eyes, hand throbbing. The house was still broken, but for one night it would keep me dry. That victory, small and bitter, was mine alone. Later, when I finally checked my phone again, Sophie's story appeared at the top of my screen. A photo of her suitcase, perfectly packed, captioned with pastel hearts. Retreat fully funded. Healing begins soon. My breath caught. 2 weeks ago, my mother swore she had no money to help me, claimed every cent was tied up. Now Sophie was fully covered, every dollar provided. By whom? The next day, I received a message from my mother. Come to the house tomorrow evening. Family meeting. It's important. I drove back reluctantly, my hands clammy against the wheel. In the living room, the family gathered like a tribunal. Sophie sat beside my mother, arms folded, a smirk tugging her lips. My mother held a stack of papers. This is about your house, she began. It's not right for you to handle it alone. We've decided it should belong to the family trust. She pushed the papers toward me. Sign it, and it will be safer for everyone. We'll manage it properly. I skimmed the document. It was a transfer deed. Signing it meant the house would no longer be mine. My throat tightened. Why would I give away the only thing I have? Mother's eyes narrowed. Because keeping it will only bring shame. You can't handle it. It's selfish to hold on to something when Sophie needs real support. This is the way forward. I set the papers back on the table. No. Her voice sharpened. Then you are making your choice clear. You want to cut yourself off from us. Don't expect a place here anymore. The sentence landed like a gavel. I felt the room tilt. My aunt looked down at her lap. My uncle shifted uneasily. Sophie leaned closer to my mother, basking in the glow of her protection. I walked out without another word, the silence heavier than any insult. From that moment, I was the scapegoat. Every simmering resentment, every frustration was hung on me. Cousins stopped calling, aunts stopped replying. Even family friends avoided me, whispering behind polite smiles. My name had become shorthand for failure. One night, as I was leaving the grocery store, I saw Sophie in the parking lot, phone pressed to her ear. She didn't notice me at first. Her voice carried in the cool air. Don't worry, she whispered urgently. Mum already covered that part. Clara will never know. I froze behind a row of carts, pulse hammering in my ears. Covered what? What secret had they buried so carefully? Sophie laughed softly, sliding into her car. The door shut and the sound cut off, but the echo stayed inside me. They thought I would never know. But now I had to. The invitation to the community banquet arrived in the mail, embossed with gold trim. A celebration of family values and resilience. Of course, my mother was on the committee. She insisted I attend, framing it as a chance to make peace. I should have known better, but part of me hoped for truce. A night where I wouldn't be the punchline. The hall was bright with chandeliers filled with neighbours, colleagues, church members. Sophie glided in wearing a cream dress, her hair styled to perfection. I wore my only decent blazer, patched at the elbow, and prayed no one noticed. Dinner unfolded smoothly until the speeches began. My mother stood at the microphone, smiling as though she carried the world's grace. Family, she said, is about unity. But sometimes some among us forget what honour means. Her eyes landed on me. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. She raised her voice. My eldest daughter chose to throw away her father's legacy on a pile of trash. She bought a junk house, a disgrace to our name. If she wants to live like trash, then let her be trash. Laughter erupted. Phones lifted. A flash blinded me as someone filmed. My chest burned, humiliation sharper than any knife. I wanted to vanish, but my feet stayed rooted. Sophie giggled behind her hand, whispering to her friend, "She's a meme already." By morning I was. The clip spread online, my mother's voice echoing over a freeze frame of my stunned face. Comments bloomed like weeds. Trash queens spotted in the wild. Imagine your own mom roasting you at dinner. My phone became a weapon against me. I stayed offline for days, retreating into the shell of my house. Dust covered the furniture like snow. Rain dripped from the ceiling in rhythmic taunts. One night, searching through boxes the previous owner left behind, I found a battered folder, water-stained but intact. Inside were documents I recognised, old savings certificates, a letter with my father's handwriting. Home Fund for Clara, it read. My breath caught. Dad had set aside money specifically for me, the foundation for a first house. But when I checked the dates against the bank's online archive, I felt the ground tilt beneath me. The account had been closed 2 years ago, the exact month Sophie paid the deposit for her retreat. My hands trembled as I unfolded a smaller envelope hidden within the letter. The ink had faded, but my father's words were clear. If you are reading this, it means the truth has been twisted. Remember, Clara, you are not wrong. Build your roof. It will outlast the lies. I sank to the floor. The letter clutched against my chest. Tears blurred the ink, and I didn't know if I was crying for the man I lost or for the betrayal that lived on in the people still alive. The days after blurred. I moved through the house like a ghost. The roof leaked again, and I lacked the strength to climb. Cold wind pushed through broken windows. I stopped eating properly, stopped answering calls. At night, lying on the mattress, I stared at the ceiling and thought how easy it would be to let the house collapse on me. But then came a memory, quiet as breath, my father, hammer in hand, showing me how to nail a shingle. "The first roof you build," he said, smiling despite sweat running into his eyes, "is the foundation of everything. Get this right, and you'll never be homeless." The words replayed like a prayer, lifting me from the edge. Still, the rejection tightened around me. When I logged into the family group, I saw my name grayed out. I had been removed, exiled digitally, as thoroughly as in flesh. No messages, no photos, no connection. My existence erased with a swipe. That night, restless, I scrolled through the few emails my father had sent before his stroke. Buried in the archive, a newer chain appeared, forwarded from my mother's account. Attached was a PDF labelled Transfer Authorization. The subject line burned in bold from Dad's account. The sender, my mother, the recipient, Sophie. My throat closed as I clicked it open. Lines of figures filled the screen, numbers draining from the account my father built for me, and at the bottom, a signature, not his. The truth was bigger, darker than I had feared, and now I held proof. The email confirmation sat like a stone in my inbox. From Dad's account, signed not by his steady hand, but in my mother's script. The betrayal was no longer suspicion, it was fact. I spent hours cross-referencing, lining up dates. The closed home fund, the retreat payment, the envelope I'd seen her pass to Sophie. Each fragment connected into a single truth. I had been erased on purpose. Grief gave way to something sharper. For weeks, I had carried their shame like it belonged to me. Now it twisted into fury. They had stolen my father's last gift, rewritten his intentions, and laughed while I drowned under the weight of their lies. I pressed my father's letter to my chest again. Build your roof. It will outlast the lies. One night, unable to sleep, I typed toxic family scapegoat into a search bar. What I found was an entire world of strangers who understood. Survivors' forums, late-night threads, women describing the same pattern, favoritism, gaslighting, being cast as the problem. For the first time, I wasn't alone. I read their words until sunrise, tears streaking down my cheeks, not from sorrow but from recognition. When I finally posted my own story, anonymous, shaky, I expected silence. Instead, responses poured in. You're not crazy. I went through this too. You can survive it. Strangers believed me in ways my own family never had. Their empathy was a pause in the storm, a breath I hadn't realised I'd been holding. It didn't fix the leaks or erase the clip of my mother shaming me, but it steadied my hands. Days later, a notification blinked in the forum, a private message from a woman named Hannah. Clara, I think this is yours. Attached was a scanned document. My heart pounded as I opened it. It was a copy of Dad's will, an older draft, but clear. Next to Home Fund, he had written my name in black ink, underlined. No ambiguity. Shock surged through me. Someone outside the family had preserved proof of what my father wanted. How Hannah had it, I didn't yet understand, but there it was. Undeniable evidence that his gift had been mine all along. My hands trembled as I typed back, "How did you get this?" She replied only, "A story for another time. Protect it. You'll need it." I printed the file, slid it into a folder with the emails and bank slips I had already gathered. Piece by piece, I was building a wall of truth. I needed more than survival now. I needed a plan. I began scanning every old letter, every receipt Dad left behind, uploading them to a secure drive. I forwarded the incriminating emails to a backup account. At night, I spread papers across the floor like puzzle pieces, highlighting connections, fraudulent signatures, withdrawals timed to Sophie's retreat. Even text threads, where my mother dismissed me, could reveal patterns of manipulation. Each detail, once a weapon against me, became ammunition for something greater, but evidence alone wouldn't save me. The house still stood like a broken ribcage around me, each creak reminding me of its fragility. I couldn't let it collapse. I pinned flyers to the community board. House restoration volunteers needed. Meals provided. A handful of neighbours responded, including a retired carpenter, a college student studying construction, and a single mom looking to trade her time for handyman lessons. They came on Saturdays bringing tools, sharing stories. We patched drywall, replaced rotting beams, scrubbed layers of grime. My hands blistered, but for once the work felt holy. Each repaired board became proof that I was not helpless. Neighbours laughed in the kitchen as we painted, filling the hollow rooms with a life my family had tried to deny me. I wasn't just fixing a house, I was restoring myself plank by plank. When exhaustion hit, I remembered my father's words about roofs, his calloused hands guiding mine. That memory stitched me back together more tightly than any tape could. One evening, after the volunteers left, I sat on the floor surrounded by folders of evidence. I drafted an email to my uncle, the only relative who had ever treated me with even a shred of fairness. I attached copies of the will, the transfer documents, the emails. My message was short. Uncle Mark, I need you to see this. It's about Dad. It's about the truth. I hovered before pressing send, afraid of silence, afraid of betrayal again. But my father's voice whispered in memory, "Build your roof?" I clicked send. Hours later, the reply arrived. "Clara, I've seen things you haven't. You need to come by." "There's something you must see." I leaned back, pulse racing. The folder of evidence rested against my knees like armour. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting, I was preparing. But what exactly did my uncle mean? What had he seen? And why now? The house smelled of fresh paint and sawdust, a scent more powerful than any perfume. It was the morning of my workshop, and for the first time I opened my door not as a hiding place, but as an invitation. Flyers had gone out across the neighbourhood, and slowly people arrived. Young couples, curious about buying fixer-uppers, retirees looking for projects, even a few strangers who had seen the viral clip of my humiliation and wanted to know if it was real. I stood in front of the patched wall, nerves rattling in my chest. $900, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. That's all it took to own a house. Not glamorous, not perfect, but mine. Today I want to show you how to turn something broken into a foundation. Faces leaned in, curious, sympathetic. I walked them through the process, bidding at auction, reading county records, filing the paperwork. I showed photos of the house when I bought it, roof caving in, windows cracked, and then pointed around at what we'd repaired. People gasped at the contrast, and for a moment pride warmed me. Halfway through, the door opened. My Uncle Mark stepped in, holding a folder. His face was solemn. When the questions paused, he spoke. "There's something I need to add." He pulled out a single sheet of paper, yellowed with age, with my father's handwriting across the top. "To Clara only, home fund." Gasps filled the room. My knees nearly gave out. Mark's voice wavered but stayed firm. "This was never meant for anyone else. I can't stay silent anymore." The room buzzed. Whispers spread like fire. I took the paper, my father's ink a living pulse under my fingertips. It was vindication, but Mark wasn't finished. He laid down another set of documents, recent, not old. "The fund was drained after your father's death, but it wasn't emptied. A remainder sat untouched until last year. And this," he pointed to the bottom of a withdrawal slip, "isn't Clara's signature. It's forged." My breath hitched. A signature curved like mine, but wrong in its rhythm. My mother's hand, wearing my name like a mask. I pressed my fist to my mouth, nausea crawling up my throat. The silence shattered when Sophie stormed in, voice shrill. "Stop it! You don't understand!" Eyes swung to her as she clutched her bag, face flushed. "Mom did it for me. She did it because I needed the retreat." "You'll never understand what it's like to be the one who carries all the pressure." Her words cracked the air. People shifted uneasily, glancing between us. I stared at her, stunned. "Pressure?" I whispered. "All I've carried is silence." Sophie's face twisted, and before I could speak again, phones rose, recording. The truth wasn't just whispered anymore, it was captured. By the next morning, clips flooded social media. Not the old one where I was mocked, but this one. Sophie's confession, my uncle's documents, my mother's signature. The carefully built image of our family collapsed in real time. Neighbours asked questions openly. How long had this gone on? How much money had been taken? Why had my mother lied? At the grocery store, people whispered not about me, but about her. For the first time, I was not the scapegoat. Without me to absorb the blows, the tension snapped inward. Sophie screamed at my mother in the driveway, demanding why she had been dragged into this. My mother shouted back, blaming Sophie for forcing her hand. Their unity fractured under the weight of exposure. Then came the final blow. Someone leaked a scan of the withdrawal slip online, side by side with samples of my mother's handwriting. The caption read, "Forgery? This is no family legacy. This is theft." It spread faster than the first video, resharing again and again. The so-called perfect Whitmore family was undone. Invitations to events dried up. The church committee quietly removed my mother's name from their roster. Sophie's friends, once eager to bask in her glow, stopped answering calls. One evening, as I swept sawdust from the porch, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, and there she was, my mother. Her shoulders, once square with authority, slumped. Her hands trembled as she clutched her purse. She stepped closer, eyes glistening, and then, to my shock, she sank to her knees. "Clara," she whispered, her voice breaking, "please, don't let this go further. Keep it quiet, for the family." The world stilled around me, sawdust hanging in the air like ash. My mother, the woman who had laughed as she called me trash, now knelt at my feet. Every instinct screamed at me to answer, but words lodged in my throat. The choice pressed in heavier than any roof beam. When the dust settled, consequences came not through courts or lawyers, but in the quiet collapse of my mother's empire of appearances. Sophie's retreat was cancelled after the scandal broke. Her payment rescinded, the organisers unwilling to associate with controversy. The glossy pictures she had posted online were deleted, replaced with silence. Without the retreat, she lost her stage, her aura of importance. My mother fared no better. The church group she once led asked her to step down. Neighbours who once praised her table settings crossed the street to avoid her. At the supermarket, whispers followed her like shadows, but not about her daughter this time. They spoke of forgery, betrayal, greed. She had wanted me to be the family's disgrace, but instead she carried the weight herself. I didn't need revenge. Their own choices had already handed it to them. All I had to do was step aside and let the truth run its course. A week after the workshop, I received a letter in my mailbox. It was from Aunt Rachel, who had once joined in the laughter, who had shared the memes behind my back. Her handwriting trembled across the page. "Clara, I owe you an apology. I saw what happened. I didn't speak up, and I should have. I believed lies because it was easier. I'm sorry. I hope you can forgive me, even if only a little." I read it 3 times. The sting of betrayal didn't vanish, but something shifted. Not every apology erases a wound, but sometimes the acknowledgement itself is a kind of justice. It proved that even those who followed my mother blindly could awaken. Still, I didn't chase reconciliation. I sat one evening under the repaired roof, the scent of cedar shingles above me, breathing slowly. The house was no longer crumbling, neither was I. In the stillness, I let the air fill my lungs and leave again, lighter than before. It wasn't triumph I felt, not really. It was release. I named the house Second spring. The words felt right, etched into the mailbox in fresh paint. Spring not only meant renewal, but also the promise of life returning after bitter winters. This place, once a symbol of shame, became the ground on which I rebuilt myself. Week by week, I invited neighbours over. We shared meals on the porch, swapped tools, told stories late into the night. There was no hierarchy, no scapegoat, no golden child, just people, chosen family, bound not by blood, but by respect. The laughter that echoed through the rooms now belonged to us, genuine and unforced. And yet I wanted the story of this house to outlive me. My father's words echoed, "Build your roof, it will outlast the lies." He hadn't just meant for me to survive. He wanted his gift to endure. So I visited a local non-profit that managed community housing trusts. I signed the papers quietly with steady hands. One day when I no longer needed this place, it would pass into the trust, affordable, safe, waiting for someone else, cast out by the people meant to love them. No one would be able to steal it. No forged signature could erase it. The final twist belonged not to my mother, not to Sophie, but to me. I took the pain they gave me and turned it into permanence, something larger than any of us. One evening, as the sun sank and painted the walls gold, I sat on the steps with a cup of tea. My neighbour's laughter drifted from the backyard. For once, silence didn't frighten me. It comforted me. The past no longer wrote my story. I did. I didn't need to shout my victory. I didn't need them to kneel again. The greatest revenge was simple: to live as myself, unashamed, unhidden, free. Second spring stood behind me, strong and steady, and for the first time I believed my father's promise. This roof would outlast the lies.